this video, we are going to discuss why using optional as a method parameter is considered as a bad practice and or maybe an anti-pattern. So optional was introduced to reduce the errors that happens due to the null handling and write as some elegant code. And but some people like they over, I would say they overuse and they even I've seen in the code that they accept or use optional as a method parameter, and even if you see IntelliJ gives us a warning here. So so for this demo purpose I have written very simple code that let's say we have a method that performs a DB operation to look up the user based on the email and the username, and since we can perform the lookup by either name or email, so let's say the original author, mm, he would have considered the optional API and wrote the code like that. So if name is present, we would introduce add name in the main query, and if email is present, we would add that also. And if both are present, then we would add both in the query, or if none is present, maybe we can return it. That we already know. So for this demo purpose, I'm not going to build the query and just logging it or printing it on the console that whatever the username and the email is passed. And user is very simple, like a very simple Pojo having two fields. And if you go to the client of this code that uses the test service, so like this is how they need to use it. Mm, so we are calling the search user and just passing the two values, the name and the email, and let's run it. It should run fine and should print both the values, okay, as expected. And maybe let's say I only want to perform the lookup by email and not by name, so I can pass it optional.empty, and it should not print the name. Yes, cool. So everything looks good, and we think, okay, this looks so nice, and we have the option that we can pass it as empty if we don't want to use it, and we are not writing the null anywhere. So the beauty of this code is we are not writing the word specifically null anywhere, and it works like a charm. Okay, so what is the actual potential problem with this code? And okay, so the first potential problem is, even um, though the caller knows the values in the advance, so he knows that here the value is not present and here the value is present, but the client code needs to wrap those values in the optional. So that is one thing. And second thing is, what if someone like me uh, thinks that, okay, I don't want to pass the username, let me pass it as null, and boom, we'll run it and we are seeing a null pointer exception, and that is expected because we are expecting it as optional, but the optional itself is passed as a null. So that can happen, like if you are writing a library and the caller, like they are passing it null, like instead of wrap, someone forgot to wrap it inside the optional and simply passed it as null, so boom, they will break the code. So optional was invented or the introduced to reduce the null pointers, and by using this pattern we are actually like creating more NPs, so that defeats the sole purpose of the optional. In some of the cases, like this approach is acceptable, but in like day-to-day or journal code, I have not seen, or we should not be using these things. So let's fix it. How we can fix it? So we can remove this optional here and simply accept it as username and email, and I'll just wrap it here inside the optional dot of nullable since these values can be null. Same goes here. Just quickly update it. Okay, so the logic remains the same, and on the caller side we need not to wrap it inside the optional. So if valid name is present, the user can pass a valid name that works, and if they don't have a valid name or only want to perform the lookup by the email, then they can pass it as null and it works. I know this, like some people they hate writing null, but this is something that protects us. So we should not be writing optional as a method argument here. Returning optional is perfectly fine because it delegates uh, the responsibility, or not even delegates, it mandates the uh, client code to handle the cases where it can be null or it cannot be null or it can be valid value. So for example, if it was simple, let's say it is user, and maybe I'll just comment out this code, or maybe I can keep it, I'll comment it, and sorry, I'll just return a null here. Okay, and what happens, user, and on the client side code they thinks they are getting a user, and they don't do a null check here or check whether if it has a valid value or valid result or not from the DB. So let's say they write user dot name, maybe they want to print it or use the name. So what happens in that case? We get a null pointer, and indeed optional was introduced to handle these cases. So let's say, let me make it again back to use optional, and now the client has a mandate to use optional, so they cannot directly use user, they should be using user something like, let's say, user optional, and again they can use it something like that. So that avoids, if the like a service is not returning any results and it is empty, then it would be returned as, it won't be printing anything here, and if it returns something, then the valid value will be present or would be returned. Let me return it. Return, maybe DB returns a valid value. Optional dot of new user, email is test, name is test, and test dot email.com. Okay, let's run it. Oh my bad, I forgot to add a semicolon. Okay, so here we get a valid result and it is null safe as well. And if you find any other use case with null, or if you find something similar happening in your code also, you may think to refactor, and yeah, thank you.